Welcome to the Texas Values Report. This is Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Great to be with you on a glorious week in the state of Texas. You know, it's a little bit harder to say that this morning. Not that, we're a podcast where we get into a lot of national news and, the news of the day, and there's always some big story. But I do think with a lot of attention last week on Washington, D.C., and a lot of people traveling there, including myself, that the tragedy that happened last night and also more details coming out this morning with American Airlines plane crash along with a military helicopter is, still something that's heavy on my heart and probably will be for the rest of the day and a few days, if not quite a bit moving forward. And, I was about to in my night and so on when this was all happening. And I'm not one to sort of jump on social media immediately and feel like, people need to hear what I have to say on every matter. And so I didn't comment about it last night. I was still just trying to, process it. And this morning, just thinking about the situation and hearing that, that everybody was gone, that there weren't expectation of any survivors. Obviously, some reports we're hearing is that a lot of people on the plane were a part of a figure skating competition or related to that. Many of us have traveled for our children's sporting events, including my own. And then I was with my family on an American Airlines flight coming out of D.C. last week after the inauguration. And so our thoughts and prayers are with them. Look, this is a really tough situation. I don't know how it's going to turn out and what we'll find out moving forward. But there's no doubt, a lot of young kids on that flight. And, just so awful to hear about that. There's a lot going on in the state of Texas, though, as we enter into, or we just about conclude the third week of our legislative session. I got back last week, got to settle into that more as members of our team were hard working on the ground every day. And we're not too far away from two things. The governor is going to give his State of the State speech on Sunday. And a member of our team, Mary Elizabeth Castle, is going to be there on the ground for that. And then also a month from that, March 4th, is going to be our Faith and Family Day. And that's a big event that Texas Values is involved in. And we'll have other partner groups that will be a part of that as well. The Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, is going to be one of our speakers there. And I'm sure others that we'll be announcing soon. But speaking of the state legislature, we've got a great guest today. And as I understand, this is her first time to be on the show. Which is kind of surprising to me because she and I have known each other for so long. I'm like, how have we not had you on the show yet? But nonetheless, this is her first time and long overdue. Terri Leo-Wilson is state representative from District 23, which is southeast part of the Houston area in Harris County. But her district is actually, I think it includes a little bit of Brazoria. I'll let her get into some of the details of the geography. But she, before that, served at the State Board of Education for many years. That's where she and I met each other and worked on a lot of issues during that time. It was a very active time. And she served in leadership roles and has racked up, Chambers County and Galveston County is part of the district. She's racked up a whole lot of different awards for her leadership on faith and family issues, but a lot of times related to education. Representative Leo-Wilson, welcome to the Texas Values Report.
Thank you so much for having me, Jonathan. And thank you for your 40 years, probably as long as mine, service to both the State Board of Education and the legislature on very important issues that involve the family and children, and Elizabeth as well has been great. So thank you for your advocacy.
Well, and look, it's probably closer to 30 for mine, maybe 25. You've far exceeded a lot of the work that I've done, and we're involved in these things when I came along, really young in my career, trying to help out and make a difference, and quickly trying to figure out who do I talk to, who's really involved, and also who you can trust. A lot of times our work working with elected officials is trying to build that trust and confidence from the beginning, but sometimes it grows with time, and that's certainly been the case with you and I. Look, the legislative, a lot of discussion around the Trump administration and inauguration and all that kind of stuff and the transfer of power, as you would expect, but the state legislature is really, is getting to work. Not a lot's happened yet in the House. The Senate's passed a school choice bill yesterday out of committee as far as bills moving. But a lot of organizing has been happening in the Texas House. Obviously, the big issue, the new Speaker of the House, Dustin Burrows, the vote that happened the first day of the session. But then also, there's been a couple of other votes, rules votes. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about your positions on those issues and why you decided to do what you did and cast those votes.
Sure. Going back to the beginning of banning Democrat chairs, I was on the state Republican executive committee. I chaired Rules Committee one year, was the vice chair. I was part of the impetus that actually put that into the RPT rules and advocated it at convention, even on my freshman term, when other people are like, "Oh, you're gonna, tick off speakers, and there's reasons why Texas has to do it this way." I got to the front mic and advocated very heavily for it. So this is not something. This is something I fought for a really long time, as well as last session in the legislature, but also on the SREC. So in the end, we had rules that were presented to us at 4:20 a.m. in the morning, and we tried to make amendments. That was shut down. I voted to hear debate and to go forward with the amendments that a lot of those of us in the Reform Caucus had put forward. I was one of the initial members of the Reform Caucus. I kept my promises, both when we nominated through the straw poll process David Cook, and then when we went to the caucus on December 7th. I also kept my word that I would support the Republican nominee that won the caucus. I did that the previous year before with Dave Phelan, and suffered some criticism for it. But it is our rules in place so that the minority of Democrats, 62 of them, cannot join with a very minimum 14 Republicans to choose the speaker. So if there is criticism, it goes back to, I think, we have rules in place, both House caucus rules and RPT rules. And that really put us in a position which, after the caucus vote, both sides, neither one of them had 76 votes, and both sides had to come to the Democrats with concessions. The rules were put in place so we didn't have to do that. But out of necessity, both sides had to. And David Cook's side had to offer concessions as well. We didn't offer as many, according to the Democrats.
Well,
And I'm
as
very
you
good
might
friends.
expect. And let me ask you this though,
Yes.
because I think where we are now in this timeline, because the speaker vote was the big vote 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Now it's about Democrat chairs and some other things. But and maybe you can help shed some light on this. So there's a ban on Democrat chairing committees in the Texas House, but the Democrats were celebrating and they voted for it. Some people have suggested that somehow they got a better part of this deal. Can you help just
Yes.
give a little bit of information of why the vote that banned Democrat chairs did not somehow empower them so much, or your opinion on sort of
Yes.
what really happened and what's in the rules and what they mean as it relates to Democrats and Democrat chairs and the vice chair issue?
Right. I think that they looked at the amendments that the conservatives had, and I don't know any of this for sure, but my best guess is that they looked at those amendments and they thought, okay, the bill in current form does less damage to the Democrats
You're saying
than
this
if
is
they
what the
accept.
Democrats were thinking.
Yes,
Yeah, gotcha.
that's why they're celebrating. And they weighed it just like I weigh stuff. And they weighed it and said, we're far better off with the current bill, even though it has banned Democrat chairs. It does give us some more authority as vice chairs, and it does guarantee that we have the vice chairmanships. And so, there's money in there for budgets. Both in his letter to Trey Martinez Fisher, David Cook also offered, and I don't know to what degree, but he also did offer vice chairmanships. He also did offer budgets. I don't have such a problem with the budgets because the House side severely underpays compared to the Senate side. And every time we get a good committee clerk, the Senate usually steals them because they can offer them a much larger salary. So that doesn't bother me so much that either side was offering that. It does bother me that we will not be allowed to an opportunity to amend or even debate or vote on the amount. So that, and it's taxpayer money. So that
Well,
really bothers me. But on the final vote, I did vote yes for the rules. The reason I voted yes on the rules is we saw time and time again throughout previous sessions, not all the Democrat chairmen did it, but many did. They prohibited and stopped conservative bills by not giving it a hearing or giving it a hearing and then never calling for a vote to advance it to calendars and to advance it to the floor. Those were two significant ways in which they continued to kill our legislation. Will they have power to call witnesses? Will they have the authority to call a hearing or request a hearing? Will they be able to wreak havoc? Will they able to call media and have dog and pony shows about, the Republicans? Probably yes. So those were some of the concessions that were made. But that to me is far less power. And we were guaranteed by Chairman Hunter, whose bill it is, he gave legislative intent on the floor. And he said that they will not be able to override the chairman. I will be putting a journal statement in, kind of explaining my yes, but legislative intent is also important.
well, and look,
I know.
I think it's notable too, though. We're talking to Representative Terri Leo-Wilson. She's giving a little bit more detail, not only about her vote on the rules issues, but a little bit more details about what was in the meat of this, because a lot's been discussed about it. But at the end of the day, there is that sense that Republicans are still going to be in a stronger position than they
Yes.
were before. But here's what's notable too is there were 55, 56, I forget, 56 votes for David Cook. That group of people went down significantly when you got to the next big vote. I don't remember what those
Right.
numbers are, to the extent people want to get an idea of sort of where this is going, and maybe are we getting to a place where Republicans are going to move back towards uniting when they can. But a lot of this, well, all of this is really about being in a position to pass good,
Yes.
conservative, values-based legislation.
Right.
And I know there's some big bills that you're working on. One of them on the Senate side is a lieutenant governor priority. And so, look, if all the right stuff gets done, I'm not saying the speaker vote and those other things don't matter, but they probably
Yeah.
matter a lot less, because I think that's what people want. They want to get the right bills passed, and so they're concerned that these other votes could limit or could negatively impact that. So talk to us about some of the bills you're working on and why they're important,
Okay.
and your opportunity you see to pass them. And several of those I know we're involved in supporting as well.
Yes. And the several of them will have bipartisan support. I do always reach out. I always do try to support that. It helps the bill move as
Hey,
well.
yeah, I don't see there's anything wrong
So,
with that. I mean, you got to get
right.
76 votes one way or another, and
Exactly.
so amen to
Exactly.
that.
Yes, and so anyway, but the first bill that is a priority for the lieutenant governor as well is the Parents' Rights Handbook. Right now in code, in both the Texas Education Code, in the Health and Safety Code, and also in the Code of Federal Regulations, there are parents' rights, but they are all over the place. There's no one centralized place where a parent can go to get clarity that's convenient so that they can know what exactly are their parental rights. And so this would create an online handbook that would be very accessible to parents. And I think that that's important to put all of that together. Also, the additional part of the bill that I love is that the bill also mandates that school board members must be trained on Parents' Bill of Rights. So they will too also have that in a convenient, handy way, but they also are required to take training so that they know and understand and can help parents with the rights and also respect those rights.
Well, look, we got to break some of that mindset that has taken over a lot of people in the education field. We saw this play out in other parts of the country where you had members of the government suggesting that parents were domestic terrorists just because they wanted to speak at a school board member a meeting, or they wanted to communicate their concern as a parent. I mean, the default should be the parents are in charge and are the ones that safeguard their children, unless they have given over some other rights or whatever to the school. Unfortunately, what I think we've seen taking place in public schools for the past several years, and for maybe even longer than that, is the mindset of a lot of educators, educrats, whatever you want to call people that are working in public education. A lot of times people in more of an executive position, but maybe also in the classroom as well, is that they know better than the parents, to the extent that we know some of them in the education field and in public schools are deliberately withholding important information from parents. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Because of this notion that the parent is somehow a threat to the child, or we know better. I think a lot of it, though, is they know if that the parents found out about that information, they would not put up with it, and they'd have something to say about it. And I think and I'm being a little bit vigorous. You probably are going to take a more, diplomatic approach to this when you communicate. But the heart of a parent is incredibly strong. We only give our kids over to the public school, if you will, because we're expecting and believing that, and we can trust them for our children to go there, and that they're going to first think, I got to think about what the parents want here before I do anything else. I think that, your bills, the work you're doing is going to go a long way for that.
And I do think they've forgotten that, Jonathan. I taught public school for 38 years. So, and I was both a teacher and in the administrative end. So, and it is very intimidating for parents. One of the things I really tried to do was, no matter what happened, always include the parent. In local parentis means that while that child is at school, you are really in place of the parent. So unless you know what those parents' rights are, unless you know the direction that those parents want you to go, how can you be in local parentis? So and that stemmed from a respect and a mutual understanding initially when that law was passed, that parents really are in charge of the educational process, and you as an educator are fulfilling their place. You're not inventing a new place.
Yeah, they'll call you and say, hey, your kid wants an aspirin. We got to get your permission, but you're going to go over here and talk to them about pronouns. You're going to hide information. There's going to be things going on in their life. You're going to try to push all this political stuff, whatever the case may be. Some of the examples we've seen where people in the education field have overstepped or ignored the rights of parents to be involved in these conversations. It's a double standard that's been going on. At the federal level, we know President Trump has talked about, getting rid of the Department of Education. I think a lot of that is because parents have been frustrated with some of these circumstances. Tell us the bill number, by the way, on that bill that we're talking about in the House.
It's 1137.
Okay, and we'll be
1137.
People will see us putting more and more of this information on our website, and we'll be talking about this at our Faith and Family Day on March 4th here at the Texas Capitol in Austin, and we invite people to come in for that. Well, look, we've seen executive orders coming down from the president on a lot of these type of issues, trying to reset the situation, but it really is primarily the role of us at the state level dealing with these different things. And I think your experience goes a long way. And I'm glad you mentioned that your work in the classroom. Obviously, we know about the State Board of Education, but professionally, some of the work you've done, you know what it's like to be in those settings, but you also know what it's like to be as a parent. Frankly, it doesn't bother me if people that are in the employees at my kid's school, are like, oh, that's that parent that's always around or whatever. And I have a great relationship with my kid's school, and I'm grateful for that. And my kids are in private school. I don't think it should be any different. But sometimes my kids are like, Dad, they're going to think this or whatever. I'm like, nobody, look, there's no reason why they should think it in a negative way if a parent is continuing to be involved, is continuing to be in communication, because it also allows me as a parent to know what's going on and then also build more trust with those people at that level. And I appreciate, because a lot of times when I get those conversations with my people from my school, they communicate we're not in a position to really know what the best solution is if there's a problem, whatever, unless we know what's going on, in the house, or, from your perspective as a parent, they recognize and acknowledge this has got to be a collaborative, and it's got to start with the parents.
Yes, absolutely. And I worked specifically with special needs students. So that individual education plan is a contract with the parent. And part of that contract involves, it's unstated, but it's trust. And
Yeah.
you build that trust by mutual understanding and respect. And, I oftentimes, because I had the trust of the parents, I was able to make suggestions when I saw something that we could try that might be better. And had I not had that trust of the parent, they might not want me to go outside of the box or try something new with a difficult learner, with somebody that has different, whatever the disability is. They don't learn like other students learn, and sometimes you've got to think outside of the box, and that's a cooperation between you and the parent, because you want that to carry over into the home too. You want that to be a
Exactly.
lifelong skill.
Well,
And
and
so
you also
if
want
you're not doing anything bad, there's nothing to hide.
That's exactly right. And you don't want the students there thinking, oh, there's some information that I can hide from my parents, and then I can go
Right.
tell the school administrator about it, and then I want my parents to know about it.
Yeah.
And we know these can lead to some really negative circumstances when parents aren't aware if there's a struggle that their child's dealing with. We've seen the mental health crisis. We've seen the suicide rates. Right. And so I think the more that a lot of this stuff is out and open, and the respect first is with the parents, that will, hopefully we'll see a lot of these things improve. But we're 3 weeks into the session. As you know, a lot of stuff happens in March and in April, but the foundations are being laid. Committee assignments, I hear, are not going to come out at the end of this week. I heard Speaker Burrows speak at an event earlier this week. Maybe they will. What's your prediction?
I'm not sure. I mean, there's 150 members and there's a lot of committees, and I know he wants to balance those. It's in his best interest to make sure that those are committees that have expertise in the individual members' areas. He has said that he will be looking at that to see, where do members, where are their hearts, where are their desires, where would they like to serve, but also where's their area of expertise. Mine obviously is in public education. He's got a lot to think about, and he's also got seniority to think about, because that's part of the pick as well. Is with seniority comes some guarantees that you will have your preferences and those items taken care of by the speaker. So he's got to consider seniority. There's just a lot that goes into it. A lot of times people get frustrated with the House because we're slower. First of all, constitutionally, we can't hear a bill until 90 days in, which is around March 15th. I don't know what the date is exactly this year. So they always get frustrated that the House is passing, or the Senate's passing out bills, and it looks like we're doing nothing. But you have fewer members of the Senate, you have fewer bills that are filed. When you take 150 people and you take a body that's not predominantly the same political makeup as the Senate. And I mean, you have a lot to consider
Well,
as a speaker,
and
we're a little bit slower because of the speaker process. Normally, we know who it is in December.
Well,
and so,
and who that is once every 4 years in the Senate, because that lieutenant governor's position is on the ballot. So there are some different dynamics, as well as a lot more change in membership, definitely during the House, because you have more members, whereas in the Senate, we don't see quite as many of those things. And so one way or another, though, we're going to get down to the work, and I think that's what matters most to people. What bills are going to get passed, what issues are going to get addressed, and I know these education issues are important to you. We'll be right there supporting you as well. And, look, when we need to make those big push, we will. You've got a huge area, close to the Houston area, I know, where a lot of people are very involved in these issues. And so we're appreciative of all the work that you've done and that you continue to do in our opportunity to work together with you. And we appreciate you being a guest today on the Texas Values Report.
Thank you so much. And I'd love to come back and talk about other bills and the process.
Yep, we'll have time for that. Representative Terri Leo-Wilson has been our guest today on the Texas Values Report.
Thank you for all that you do, Jonathan.
Appreciate you. Okay, I got about a minute and a half left as Representative Leo-Wilson exits to, maybe a little commentary wrap up from some other things going on that relate to the legislative session, but also relate to some of our work. Executive orders aplenty, okay, coming from President Trump last week, but obviously this week. Dr. Heim, we did a special segment on this on Friday. It was a little wonky because we don't have the same setup in the office that I was in that day versus our in-house studio. That's going to change pretty quickly, though. By the way, that was something I noticed after doing that special segment. And I'm not trying to take credit away from anyone. There were a lot of people more involved than we were. But we legitimately played a role in making sure a man could be set free from jail. Dr. Heim is the doctor who blew the whistle, the Texas whistleblower who told the truth about what was happening at Texas Children's Hospital, their involvement in these sex change processes and procedures related to kids. We know that that's illegal, but we also know Texas Children's Hospital, according to Dr. Heim, was involved in doing some of these things, not once the law was passed, but before it was passed, but after they had told people that they had stopped doing it. He came forward and told the truth. He got grilled by a lot of people. The Department of Justice under President Biden indicted him. They brought criminal charges against him. He was facing up to 10 years in jail. I was getting information that suggested he might end up in jail last weekend if the Department of Justice under Trump now did not come in and drop the charges. I was grateful that when I was in D.C., I had one opportunity to communicate the urgency of that issue to people that I thought could have an impact, and so I was able to do that. A lot of other people were engaged in using their influence as well, and what a joy to end the week with the Department of Justice under Trump dropping those charges, filing in court, the judge signing it, and Dr. Heim knowing going into the weekend he was a free man. He did not have to worry about ending up in jail. In this, close to 2-year saga that he's had to deal with was gone. And so congratulations to him, but what an honor to be in a position to help in any way that we did. I had a conversation with Dr. Heim about it on Friday. I'm not sure of this. I think I might have been the first to call him to tell him because sometimes things are up on social media before people know about it. But either way, when we talked, he was just through the roof. You could tell that he was exhausted. He was, really in a very tough position and emotional, but at the same time elated and so grateful for many people like you. And it's your support of Texas Values that allows us to be in a position to help people like Dr. Heim and others. And so, wow, just an incredible moment. And for me too, personally, just to feel like, okay, gosh, we actually helped someone. It's not every day that you get to be that close to such an important situation. And so I feel very honored that we had trust from him and others to be involved in that issue. And so incredible victory. And certainly, the majority of the credit goes to the Trump administration and the Department of Justice for making that decision. And it couldn't have been any more timely. Listen, those are some reasons why you should consider donating to us as we're in the last 2 days of the month. We do have expenses that are piling up as we start the legislative session. We're trying to reset from the end of last year and a tremendous amount of work we did. Please consider making a tax-deductible donation at our website, txvalues.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We hope to see you on March 4th at Texas Faith and Family Day. Your support, your work with us. And by the way, Texas Values University is going to be launching soon. Look for that. But in the meantime, please consider supporting our work. Forward an email to a friend. Post on social media. All these things together is how we can protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.